Hello, today I'm going to take a look at this set of 24 Lightwish Madisi watercolour paints. These were sent to me for free to review, so let's take a look at them. They come in this quite sturdy cardboard box. And inside the lid, it looks like watercolour paper, which is stuck down for a swatching sheet. And the first thing that I noticed is they look really similar to Kuretake Gansai Tambi paints. So they've got an inside cover, and then we've got like a black flock insert, and they've got nice individual little holes there. So taking a look at the pans, they're quite shallow, but obviously a good sized pan. I've got this set of Kuretake Gansai Tambi paints. So just to take a look at the pan equivalent. They're almost identical really. I'll do a comparison of how they actually paint out as well. They don't have any name or pigment information on them though, whereas the Gansai Tambi have the name on. Although there are 24 colours in both of these sets, the Kuretake Gansai Tambi take up less space, though they don't have brushes with them, and the Kuretake box isn't as deep. I don't have any light fast information or pigment information on these. I've just given the colour names. So I'm going to swatch them out first. I don't always include a black line on swatch sheets, but I'm curious how opaque these ones are, because if they are similar to Gansai Tambi paints, then they'll be a little bit more opaque than regular watercolours. There are 6 different sized brushes, numbered 1 to 6. I'll just go and wash these with some brush cleaner because they're kind of glued stiff at the moment. I'll just show you for the first couple how well they re-wet. That's come up nice and creamy quite quickly. I'll do the top half of the box solid colour, and then I'll pull down with fresh water into the bottom half of the box. Yeah, they definitely seem to re-wet nicely so far. I used black Posca pen for the line, and it's repelling the paint ever so slightly. They don't flow into the water super fast. But they are mixing in quite nicely. And actually this paintbrush is not too bad at all. I'll speed through the rest of these now. The paints have dried now, and my first impression of them is that they're very pleasant to use. They all re-wet easily and went down quite nicely. They don't flow particularly fast into water, but they do mix in nicely. There's a variation in the opacity of them. It's like the yellow ochre and this portrait tone, which has probably got white in it. You can see you'd expect them to be most opaque, and they are. And then others are quite transparent. The ultramarine blue's got a little bit of granulation, but not loads. I'm not sure if you can make out, there's a tiny bit of shine to the paints where they're really thick. But they're not too bad at all for shine in the watered out areas. I think overall that's a nice set of colours. The brush lost, I think, one bristle I noticed coming out, but kept its tip quite nicely. It's not as nice to use as my favourite brushes, like the Princeton Neptune or Silver Black Velvets, but I was pleasantly surprised about how good it was. I'll have a play around with them a bit and then do a painting with them. I'll take a look at how they mix first of all. They seem to mix very nicely. The colours are quite bright and vivid. I'm just going to try mixing the ultramarine and the burnt sienna, see what kind of neutrals we get. The burnt sienna's got a fair bit of opacity about it. Yeah, it makes quite a nice neutral shadow colour. And you can see the ultramarine is bringing some granulation to the mixes that it's in, which I like. So I've saturated the brush now, and I just want to see how much water it holds. And that's the brush after. So not the best brushes in the world, but definitely not the worst. I thought I'd just play around with the Gansai Tambi now, side by side with the Lightwish Madisi ones, and see how they compare. So this is the Lightwish Madisi Vermilion. And then I've got the Gansai Tambi Vermilion. It feels like they paint fairly similarly. They re-wet in a similar way, but the Gansai Tambi Vermilion has got more opacity to it. It's a little bit hard to compare the sets in terms of opacity though, because the only Gansai Tambi set I've got is this Art Nouveau ones, and they're all quite muted colours, which have probably mostly got white pigment in them, which will add to their opacity. That's the Cobalt Turquoise Light from Gansai Tambi. And that's the Cerulean Blue from the Lightwish Madisi set. They do feel very similar to use though, in the experience of how they re-wet and paint out. Swatching them out like that anyway, I can't feel an awful lot of difference between them. I've pulled out this book, Imagine a Forest by Dinara Mirtalipova. And I thought it'd be nice to pick an illustration from it to try out the paints. It's a really gorgeous book. She's got lots of step-by-step little illustrations throughout. I'm going to try and show more of the books that I've got in my videos. A few people have asked me about that. So yeah, a really beautiful book. I think I'm going to pick out one of these mermaid pictures and copy out something like that. I've got roughly an A5 size sheet of paper, and it's Canson XL watercolour paper. I was pretty pleased with how the white layered up on top of the black, though for the finer details I decided to use Posca markers. So here's my little mermaid, and that's taken from the book Imagine a Forest by Dinara Mirtalipova. So the paints were absolutely lovely to work with for this kind of illustrative-y, fun painting where I'm not doing loads of delicate washes or anything. I think they were just great. It was a little bit scary using the brushes for the fine detail because the point wasn't totally reliable. Sometimes the bristles would splay out a little bit and I lost 1 or 2 hairs. But actually they still did pretty well, especially when I'm comparing it to brushes that I normally use, which would cost as much as this whole set put together. I mean, it's not a professional grade set. We don't have light fast information or pigment information. But for a student grade set that's something similar to the equivalent of the Gansai Tambi from Kuretake, I'd say this is definitely a great set. It's also pretty pigmented. I've not used a whole ton of the red that I was using. And that's, yeah, they look virtually unused still. So I hope you enjoyed that review, or that it was useful for somebody. Thank you for joining me. Bye!